really, there's been a lot of information about the Ferguson Police Department, especially some of their past behavior when it comes to people who are minorities and the way that they treat them. A really telling story came out in the Daily Beast today, written by Michael Daly, about a 52-year-old man by the name of Henry Davis. Now, back in 2009, police stopped him while he was driving, and apparently they were looking for someone who had the same name and who had a warrant out for his arrest. Now, unfortunately, the cops didn't do a proper investigation. They just saw that his name was also Henry Davis, and they decided that they were going to arrest him. But they didn't give him any answers to any of the questions that he had. They arrested him without saying anything, and he had a huge problem with that. Now, keep in mind, they had the wrong guy. The person that they were looking for had a completely different middle name and a completely different social security number. There's Henry Davis right now, so you're going to get a sense of...
That's the incorrect guy. That guy was
the wrong guy.
He was a welder. He was working that night, and it was what, like 1 or 2?
It was in the middle of the night.
Middle of the night, they pulled him over, and he pulled over because he pulled off the highway because it was raining too hard, and he didn't feel safe driving home, so he pulled off the highway just to wait out the rain. Cop comes up behind him, runs his plate because there's a black guy sitting in a car, and the name came up Henry Davis, even though they have different middle names. And the cop,
Social Security.
and different Social Security numbers, and the cop goes arrested.
And he kept trying to tell the cop that arrested him, you got the wrong guy, there's no warrant out for my arrest, but they didn't listen to him. Davis said the cop approached his vehicle, grabbed his cell phone from his hand, cuffed him, and placed him in the back of the patrol car without a word of explanation. Now, at that point, they took him to jail, right? The booking officer summoned a number of fellow cops. One opened the cell door while another suddenly charged, propelling Davis inside and slamming him against the back wall. I told the police officers there that I didn't do nothing. Why is you guys doing this to me? They said, okay, just lay on the ground and put your hands behind your back. They started hitting me. I was getting hit and I was just covered up.
So at one point, a female officer comes in and handcuffs him. Then they start kicking the shit out of him, okay? Yeah. And then one of them sounds like he almost got a running start and then kicks him. And so that's when he gets bloodied, right? And all the time it's the wrong guy, but they didn't bother doing a thorough enough investigation. And all the time you have to understand something. He never resisted.
He never resisted, and we have proof that he never existed, overwhelming proof that he never existed. And you're leaving out one thing which I think is really telling, because I don't think that cops, even in Ferguson, although they might, because again, they're how many officers they have? 53?
53.
53 of the 89 dumbest people in America work at the Ferguson Police Department. That's a fact. I looked it up. This guy, it was 3 in the morning. He gets there, and they have stacked up by the desk sergeant a bunch of mattresses, little mats. And he goes into a one-person cell, one cot, tiny little cell, one person. There's already somebody in it, asleep on the cot. It's 3 in the morning. He looks at the wood, at this tiny room and a cement floor, and he says, can I get one of those cots? And the cop says, you're not getting nothing. And then he says, you want me to sleep on the floor? I didn't do anything. You've dragged me down and you want me to sleep on the floor. So to them, he opened himself up to it. He was uppity. He was angry. He was giving them lip. He got mad because they couldn't be persuaded to give a guy a little mat to put on the floor when they're only supposed to put one guy in the cell to begin with so that he could lie down at 3 o'clock in the morning on the cement floor. That gave them the right to, hey, we got good news. We got a guy who's trouble. Let's go.
And you know what I
Get
say?
the tank.
Those are just a couple of bad apples, nothing to worry about. Next story.
That's what they always say. Now, believe it or not, we have not gotten to the worst part yet.
I know. So then at that point, they started beating him up, and they beat him up so severely that he had to be hospitalized. They hospitalized him, and he said he didn't want any treatment until someone got a picture of him bleeding so he would have evidence of what the cops had done to him. And that's why we have that picture that we were showing to you earlier. After he was hospitalized and treated for his injuries, they actually put him back behind bars. He was driven back to the jail where he was held for several days before he posted $1,500 bond for 4 counts of property damage. Police officer John Baird signed complaints swearing on pain of perjury that Davis had bled on his uniform and those of 3 fellow officers. In fact, let me give you the exact report that was filed by the police officials. Henry Davis did then and there unlawfully commit the offense of, quote, property damage, to wit, did transfer blood to the uniform.
So let's understand this, okay? Now they know they got the wrong guy, okay? And they beat the crap out of him, and by the way, he got a concussion too on top of everything else. So then they bring it, and then they say, well, we got to charge him with something, right? oh, you bled on our uniform while we were kicking the living crap out of you and pummeling you. So that's property damage to my uniform. Okay, there you go. We charge you with something.
And it just gets worse, though.
He, by the way, just to understand how he got that picture, he got that picture taken because he wouldn't let the people at the hospital clean his face. He was like, somebody take a picture, somebody document what has happened, and thankfully somebody did.
All right, so at that point, of course, he filed a lawsuit against the police officials. Now, it's egregious enough that they claimed that there was property damage because his blood got on them as they were beating him up, right? But then, during the court proceedings, the cops denied that there was ever any blood on their uniforms in the first place. And when the lawyer for Henry, James Chattel, was asking them, well, didn't you say in your complaint that you got blood on your uniform? They're like, yeah, that's right, we did say that. And then was there blood on your uniform? No, there wasn't.
So great. It's so
and
great.
then at one point, I think that they used the excuse, oh, one of us got a bloody nose while we were kicking his ass. And that was the blood on our uniform. And so they never finished the logic there. I think that what they were going to say is, well, you see, he did property damage to our uniform because we exerted ourselves so much assaulting him that one of the guys bled onto his uniform, and hence he's guilty of property damage.
We got the picture of him, but I mean that exchange, that great moment of, did he get blood on your uniform? No. Here's your affidavit, which says that he got blood on your uniform. Did you sign that affidavit? Yes. Is that your signature? Yes. Didn't I just ask you a second ago whether he bled on your uniform? You did. And didn't you say no? Yes, I did.
No, it's crazy.
It's like you either committed perjury then, or you're doing it now. But one of those times you committed perjury.
So tell me these cops got convicted.
Oh, the story just gets worse. Of course, the lawyer is asking for surveillance. There's surveillance in the jail, and he wants to provide that evidence to show the court exactly what happened on that night.
And a judge ordered them.
Yes.
Ordered them to turn over the tapes from that night.
Here's what they turned over. VHS video was recorded at 32 times normal speed. According to the lawyer for Davis, it was like a blur. You couldn't see anything. The blur proved to be from 12 hours after the incident anyway. The cops had saved the wrong footage after Chattel, that's the lawyer, asked them to preserve it.
Oh, so it was the lawyer, not the judge, asking
So,
him to preserve
Kate, preserve the evidence. Like, oh, shoot, we preserved the wrong 12 hours, and then we gave it to you in a way that you couldn't watch it so that you might think that it was the right 12 hours and that there was just a simple recording error. Golly gee, oh my God, what another just innocent screw up. Yeah. Jimmy, they're just a couple of bad apples.
That's all it is. And it's making a big deal out of it.
Yeah, and it's not even bad apples for Ferguson in this case. It was just a simple oversight.
Yeah,
if he hadn't bled on them, if he'd had the courtesy to bleed on the floor, the cement floor that he was supposed to sleep on, well, then none of this would have been a problem.
I mean, a lot of it's his fault for being black, right?
Well, then there's that.
And having the same name as another black guy who has a warrant out for his arrest.
White people can see in a driving rainstorm, okay? Shouldn't have been behind the wheels.
So there's the last part of the story, and this is probably the part that's going to enrage everyone the most. So it was obviously perjury, right? If the cops claimed that they had blood on their uniform, even though that's a ridiculous thing to claim and charge someone with, well, then they shouldn't lie about it in court, and they shouldn't lie in any court documents. But it turns out they're not going to face any consequences for the perjury. However lax the department's system and however contradictory the officer's testimony, a federal magistrate ruled that the apparent perjury about the property damage charges was too minor to constitute a violation of due process, and that Davis's injuries were too minor to warrant a finding of excessive force. Never mind that a CAT scan taken after the incident confirmed that he had suffered a concussion.
No charges. You take a guy, you beat the crap out of him, you bloody him up, you give him a concussion, you lie about it through your teeth.
Get caught lying.
You get caught lying, nobody gives a damn. Now, meanwhile, I remember when we had the Michael Brown incident right in the first couple of days, and I overheard somebody at lunch saying, look, there was a report that he slapped away the cop's hand. So I got news for you, that's assault. That's not too minor. Slapping away a cop's hand is not too minor, right? Taking a guy's head, kicking it, smashing it into the ground, punching him repeatedly is minor. Is minor.
It's handcuffed.
And while he's handcuffed.
So, on top of it, they're pussies.